June 15th, 2021, it was just a normal day. I called my wife and she was getting her mother's prescription, so I decided just to go ahead and work late.
We just finished planting flowers and then Summer was putting the rocks on top, and then she got a piece of candy from Grandma, and then she asked to go back in the house with the boys. Well, she walked right in the house. After Summer went inside, I walked back over here to my mom's camper, and I fixed my mom's knee brace when she was sitting right here in the doorway. And I told my mom that I have to go back in with the kids. Helping my mom with the knee brace only took like 2 to 3 minutes. After I came into the house, I asked the boys where she was, and they said that she went downstairs to play in the playroom. And I came into the playroom and looked. I even looked under the bunk beds and everywhere, and she wasn't here at all. When I couldn't find Summer in the basement, I come outside and I stood up here on this hill and I hollered for her and told the boys that she wasn't down there. And then I went outside and I called Donnie right away.
About 5:30 p.m., my wife Candus called and said she couldn't find Summer. I says, well, hang up for me and call 911. So I threw my tools in the car as fast as I could, got in there and started down the road and called 911 myself. I've passed all kind of cars in double yellow and everything when I'm getting really worried. So here's my road. I pull down here, here's the creek right here. I notice my 3 boys are together and they're over here looking. And then I looked over that way and seen my neighbor coming this way towards my boys, and my heart sunk because I knew she was abducted. I knew she was gone.
There's no such thing as body language of deception. There's only body language of increased stress, and that indicates something for us.
There are no absolutes. Just because someone does this doesn't mean they're lying or telling you the truth.
And in real life every day, debriefers do exactly what we do, and they find information the person doesn't remember that they saw.
I thought it was a 4-wheel drive, like Ford Escape or a Bronco or something.
It looked like a blue minivan to me, but I don't know.
Small blue minivan?
That's what it looked like to me.
We knew we would get to a point where it was going to be hard emotionally. And that's hard to do because people will think you're a monster, but that's important to getting facts. Do you know what happened to Summer?
No.
Do you know who took Summer?
No.
We actually hit harder on the questions for what happened that day. When did this happen? How long was it before this happened?
When you come home, when you first come home.
I'm not doing all that. I'm not going all the way back. I can't do this.
So listen, they're trying to help. They're trying to help.
It's not helping me.
I know, but they might.
There's nothing more to remember.
And we did see some interesting body language.
I want to go home.
Scott, what has jumped out to you most about either one of these two, either mom or dad? What's jumped out at you most?
The differences in comfort and discomfort as we speak with them. There are certain things we touch on, and when we're talking to them, they're comfortable. They start becoming uncomfortable due to stress. Those are the things we look for, and we saw those things jump out.
Yeah, and we're going to look at some of those in a minute. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, Doc, so we look for a baseline, and baseline can be everything from speech patterns to movement to all of those. Everyone here, if you ever been pulled over by a police officer, the way you talk changes, the way you move changes, that's stress. So we're looking for that, and we're talking to these people. And it's different in Candus and in Don.
Let's start looking at some of these tapes just right off. Let's start with Don, because you did sit down with him first, and you spent a long time interviewing him, but we've agreed to look at some particular clips that seem to be of some significance.
Is there anything about Candus's story that makes you question the story?
No, not the way it played out and everything like that. I mean, yeah, you always have questions, and I'd ask myself, but the way that it happened and her emotions and her state of mind.
What were the questions that you had?
I mean, I don't really have any. I mean, I don't really have any questions. I mean,
from a psychological standpoint, not paying any attention yet to any of the body language or any of the physiology of that, I heard him say yes twice and no 4 times in there. He was stammering, stuttering all over the place. What'd you make of that?
So for me, what I see is editing as you speak. You'll notice his eyes are dropping down to his left. He's having kind of an internal conversation about how do I answer this very complicated question. And I think he edits, he speaks, he edits, he speaks, and never finishes a sentence.
It's very clear to me that he is editing. That means he's holding something back, guarding something. He has knowledge of something that he's not just derping up.
That's correct. Exactly.
So the question is, what's he know that he's not telling us?
So what do you say to somebody who says, no, you're involved, your family's involved? How do you respond to that?
Well, for 3 months, I spent on the phone for 3 months. I accepted every friend request there was. People want, well, I'm your friend, we've moved for you, and, you know, for 3 months, I stayed on the phone day and night, trying to find her baby, because I figured Facebook's the best tool possible to help find her. And but there's this group on Facebook combating us the whole time, and we don't know who this group is or what they're up to.
When you ask this guy this question, what I was saying is, how do you respond to people who say you did this? Well, I expected, well, no, I didn't. But he doesn't. He goes on to talk about Facebook. In usual interrogations, we assume that is deceptive and avoiding.
When Greg asked him how he responded to that, he's talking about responding to people on Facebook. He's talking about responding to people on YouTube. He's had a whole lot of flack come from that direction. So I understood that he didn't see it as when an investigator asked you that question, or when I asked you that question. He said, in other words, he took it as when social media asks you that question, how do you respond to them? That was his
Meaning
impression.
physically, how do you do it?
Come up here with me for a minute, if you would, and let's take a look at this, because this, to me, would be just real deflection and deception unless you understand that he's very concrete in this. Let's look at how the question is asked.
So what do you say to somebody who says, no, you're involved, your family's involved? How do you respond to that?
Well,
Okay, at that point you said, how do you respond to that? You meant, how do you respond to it like, no, I deny that. I don't.
Exactly.
But
From an
instead,
abstract.
he says, well, I used the phone, I used the keyboard. That's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Did you consider this deceptive at all, or did you think he just was answering the wrong question?
Initially, we thought it was deceptive, that he was redirecting the answer, the answer to the question to somewhere else. That's what we thought.
And there are two indicators that made us think that. His blink rate goes through the roof, which means you're feeling stress, but it can also be processor speed as I am trying to think through something. And we think that's what we're seeing.
Okay, and when you say his blink rate went through the roof, you're talking about while he's answering the question.
That's
here.
correct.
Yes.
well, for 3 months, I spent on the phone for 3 months. I accepted every friend request there was. People want, well, I'm your friend, we've moved for you. And
Okay, his blink rate here is probably 70, 80 a minute.
For sure.
least.
And that's higher by far than anyone sitting here.
Do you know where Summer is?
oh no, I wish
Do you
I
have
did.
any earthly idea what happened to her?
No, I wished I did.
Do you think Candus had anything to do with it?
No.
And what about this? And you think what might have happened to her was what?
She was kidnapped.
Yeah.
When he says kidnapped, I associate kidnapping, because of my background, with trading the person back for something. If that's the case, that has meaning. If it's just he uses words interchangeably, has no meaning.
Out of the gate, if I ask you what happened to Jordan, he was missing. Or what should happen to that person, don't answer it because I know it would be bad. You wouldn't say, it wouldn't be a pause there. You wouldn't say put him away for a long time, they should go away forever. You would have a very extremely graphic answer to that.
Yeah, it wouldn't take me 5 seconds to think about it. Give me 10 seconds in a room alone with him, and we'll be through.
If someone stole your dog, you
Yeah,
would have-
same answer.
That's the answer.
Same answer. But here, what you get is very different. Here, what you get is a pause and then a response.
Person that did this, what do you think should happen to them?
Okay, now, you said, what do you think should happen to them? First thing she does is close her eyes,
She's blocking.
And we call that eye blocking or escaping. Right?
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
getting away.
and then there's a pause.
Yep, she's thinking.
Watch her respiration. Watch her
Yeah.
breathing. You can't miss it.
They should be put away for the rest of their lives. I mean, they should be tormented, I think.
A lot here. We see her eyebrow go up there. She's not sure what she should say. Everything she's doing says I'm unsure and shouldn't be saying this.
The guys who run organized crime around you worried about them at all?
Oh, they questioned him, and he has an alibi, you know, but, you know,
What about those fellows that live around there in the cornbread mafia?
cornbread mafia.
That's what we call them where we live. I don't know if this.
I have no idea. I've heard about some hillbilly mafia type stuff and everything, you know, and all these different boys. We've tried to steer clear from all these.
His words off me.
I've tried to steer clear from all these people just as much as possible. And I think they've kind of seen us as targets because they have come up and stole our stuff. They come up in my shed and stole all my mechanic tools at one time. You know, when they knew we were gone. They knew me and her were together. Just hang on.
Have you guys put any kind of security or anything on your place?
No, we don't have any kind of security.
Okay, now this is significant to me for a lot of different reasons. We haven't seen a lot of tears from her. She's talked about Summer, she's talked about her disappearance, she's talked about looking for her, she's talked about her being gone, she's gone down into her room where she lives, she's picked up her toys, she's held her toys, she's looked at the bed she's not in, she's looked at trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger after trigger, and not a tear. But then you ask about the cornbread mafia, which is a colloquial term for a kind of organized grassroots crime syndicate in Tennessee.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
And let's see what happens when you ask. Let's pay attention to her.
What about those fellas that live around there in the cornbread mafia?
Oh, cornbread mafia.
That's what we call it.
So we started by trying to give her a little space with organized crime.
Yeah. And so Greg brings up organized crime, doesn't register anything with her. As soon as I say cornbread mafia, we'll watch this side of her mouth start dragging down. Because that's when the emotion hits.
Cornbread mafia.
That's what we call
Yeah, right there is when you say it.
I have no idea. I've heard about some hillbilly mafia type stuff and everything, you know, and all these different boys. We've tried to steer clear from all these.
His words off me.
I've tried to steer clear.
We call this insulating and running. She insulates, she starts crying, so we can't get to her. In other words, psychologically, we can't speak to her. And we see the emotion. As soon as I say cornbread mafia, right there, as we see that mouth start dragging down within seconds. And that's how long it takes to get into the brain and work around, do its thing, and say, hey, this isn't good. And it shows emotions coming from this that most likely shouldn't be there, which of course we'll discuss later.
I will also say, are the tears real? Absolutely, because you can't fake a snotty nose, just to use regular old terms. And what we know is that she is feeling pain, she is feeling emotion here that we didn't see any other place in the story. So this
But
feels
we don't know
tight.
what it is.
That's
it
right.
could be fear.
That's right.
It could be guilt. It could be fear and guilt. It could be any number of things.
We can't read minds, we read symptoms, as you say all the time. We read symptoms, but those are pretty clear symptoms.
Yeah.
Clear from all these people, just as much as possible. And I think they've kind of seen us as targets because they have come up and stole our stuff. They come up in my shed and stole all of my mechanic tools at one time. You know, when they knew we were gone. They knew me and her were together.
Okay, at this point, she wants out. She came there to help find her daughter.
Correct.
But you've raised the stakes to the point that, forget about my daughter, I want out of this room.
It's all about me at that point.
I can't do this.
Well, listen,
They're trying to help. They're trying to help.
Yeah, we're trying to
It's
help.
not helping me.
It's okay, Candus. Let's give you a minute, okay?
Said they're trying to help, so they're not helping me.
That's right. That made us
They're
go
not
after-
helping me.
If she had said, well, how's this going to help Summer? Our response would have been different, but that
this
took us down the path.
Well, we're out of time for today. Tomorrow, the parents of 5-year-old Summer Wells sit down with me for their first national television interview. Candus has been reluctant to talk with me. She walked off during her interview with Scott and Greg. Will she stay and talk about Summer, or will she walk off from this stage? I have some very important questions to ask her.
An Amber Alert now issued by the TBI for a missing 5-year-old girl.
Her parents trying to prove their innocence.
You didn't do anything to hurt your daughter?
No, sir.
Do you know what happened to Summer?
No.
And we did see some interesting body language.
New Dr. Phil. Check your local listings.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.